Hi, my name is Roshani, and I'm a graduating MAD major, and I'm going to be talking about my MAD capstone project, which is called Dulces, Sueños, the game. So, first, I'm going to start off with some trigger warnings because my game touches upon some topics like gender dysphoria, transphobia, suicidal thoughts and actions, and it also includes some violence and gore. So, I do want to make sure that if you're watching this, you are aware of the serious nature of this game and what um, what you might come across as I go through it. So I'll start off with a brief intro. My game is a piece of interactive fiction based on a short story that I wrote titled Dulces Sueños. The story metaphorically explores the point of view of young trans men of color who face subtle rejection from family members and are forced to accept a gender role that doesn't align with their identities. The story emphasizes how this can feel suffocating, violent, and even confusing. Despite their families still caring for them, the love feels disingenuous and as if it is meant for someone who doesn't really exist. The game introduces some choices that ultimately don't affect the course of the story much, but serve to amplify the feeling of helplessness. Through this game, I hope to create a cathartic experience for those who can relate to what I have described, which is especially important now as trans people are being attacked socially and politically. So, now I'll talk a bit about my process. I started off with a short horror story that I wrote for my gender civ class. It was a story that combined elements of prose, poetry, and illustrations. And I knew that I wanted to adapt it into a game for my Mad Capstone project, so I started generating ideas from there. At the beginning of my creative process, I was looking to make a 3D game inspired by games like Resident Evil 7 Biohazard and Until Dawn. And so here are some slides from my creative brief that indicate the direction I was initially leaning towards. And as you can see, there's a lot of choice system implementation and, of course, like 3D graphics that I was looking to implement into my own game. So then I went on to create a prototype in Twine to map out the choices and subsequent branches of the narrative. I tested it out with two young trans men who matched most of what I was looking for in a target audience. So these are some images of what the prototype looked like on Twine. As you can see, there are a lot of branches for the choices, and um, as it was rendered, it was just basically like a basic, like text blocks and text choices, and it was just a way for me to map out what I wanted to do. So after pitching my idea to a panel, I realized that another option I had was to make a more 2D game. People on the panel were more intrigued by my 2D art style and thought the story would lose some of its charm if I made it into a 3D game. So I made the 3D scene in Unity on the left, representing the kitchen where much of the story takes place, and then I drew the scene on the right digitally. So it's the same scene, but in 3D versus 2D. Then I showed these scenes one after the other to one of the trans men and to my capstone advisor, Nick Breeze. The feedback I received seemed to indicate that my 2D scene matched more of my story's intended vibe. That was when I decided to pivot to a web based piece of interactive fiction with 2D drawings. So that was my choice. As I said, I chose to mainly go for a 2D aesthetic. I spent the rest of my time drawing and coding in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I received some help with technical issues from my capstone advisor. And so now I will go through a playthrough of the game itself. Here's where the text starts to be positioned outside of the box, which serves to highlight a sense of mental distance from the situation. The ending circles back to the start to highlight the cyclical nature of these negative experiences. Despite the amount of work it took to make this game, the process was a lot of fun. There are a lot of things I would still like to fine tune, including the timing and the positioning of the text, to make sure that people have time to read and that the game has the effect I would like for it to have. I firmly believe that this is an important experience to portray. I can only hope that this game creates a sense of community for those who resonate with these experiences on some level. For those who don't resonate with these experiences, I hope that this game generates a sense of understanding and empathy. Trans people need allies who seek to truly understand. Thank you for every Thank you to everyone for taking the time to watch this, and feel free to play through the game on your own time by scanning the QR code.